Yo, what's cracking, guys? James back at you with a relatively short video. I got my can of Celsius sparkling snowball. It's a limited edition. It's actually not too bad. Not too bad. It tastes like a combination of a snow cone and a face full of snow, which we just had recently, although thankfully it was just more or less of a dusting. It was about an inch of snow, which for the Midwest, that's about a dusting. So, just a quick video. Just wanted to take some time to reflect on this past year, which has been nothing short of monumental. Both good, both bad. 2025 has been a hell of a year. I don't know what 2026 looks like, but here's what I want 2026 to look like. I want to leave 2025, most of it in the past. The depression, the anxiety, uh, lots of different things, certain events that occurred. I want to try to make 2026 a better year. I have a lot of things in mind, a lot of things I've been going through, a lot of projects I'm working on. And ADHD and all the things aside, for this new year, I have a lot of goals, and I plan on crushing every single one of them. I'm going to do whatever I can to do that. I know that there'll be speed bumps along the way. There'll be obstacles along the way, which, that's just the way it is, But we have to work to overcome them. And I've realized in all the projects that I've started and haven't finished that, like I've, always preached, when it comes to starting a business or really doing anything in life, to get ahead, it's all about speed and execution. A half-assed idea that's well executed is going to be more successful than, the perfect idea that's not executed. If you don't execute, nobody knows about you. Nobody knows what you're trying to do. You're trying to get your product or your service out there. If nobody knows about it, then, it's nothing. So you're not going to have everything perfect straight out of the gate. Sometimes you have to just take a few steps forward, get started, and put yourself out there, and then just keep building as you go along. And mistakes that are made, failures that occur, you just have to take inventory and just learn from them. Take notes along the way. I was successful at this. This was successful. This was a failure. I failed at this. Take those notes and go back and refine. So when I was working in tech, we had what we called KPIs, or key performance indicators. We went off of metrics for just about everything that we did. We had SLA, service level agreements. So basically, we had to adhere to certain standards and procedures and policies to make sure that things were done efficiently, correctly, and within a decent amount of time. But you have to realize that you're going to make mistakes. Does that mean that you quit? Does that mean that you give up? Absolutely not. No way. So I think in the new year, I've done, the past couple weeks, at least since my last video, I feel like I've been kind of in a black hole, so to speak. Um, just really trying to understand and realize, okay, I'm 45 years old. I've done a lot. I've accomplished a lot, but I don't feel like I've done enough. I don't feel like I've accomplished nearly everything that I would like to accomplish. Not even close. So in 2026, I have a lot of goals in mind. I have everything written down. I have my itemized lists, my bullet points. I have everything written down, and I understand, what I want, where I want to be, and the steps that I need to take to get there, to achieve those goals. And I'm just going to go through it. I'm going to just, check them off one by one. But it's not just going to be a one and done. Okay, you completed this step, move on. Complete this step, move on. It's going to be a bit of reflection after each one. Um, kind of like creating a knowledge base. Okay, here's the problem. Here's the solution. Here's the methodology and the thought process behind, and how I came to that solution. Here's what was tested. Here's what worked. Here's what didn't work. Honestly, it's a little bit easier said than done, but I've always been good with documentation. I love documentation, so um, I think it's going to work. Uh, Another thing I'm going to try to do is stop giving in to the negative bias and stop seeing the negative in everything, that I see or that I do, which leads to, self sabotage, as I discussed in my last video. Um, there's going to be a lot of changes. It's been tough, but it's kind of at this point in my life, it's shit or get off the pot. That's pretty much where I'm at. Uh, I told myself we're either going to make this happen, we're going to do this, or just say the hell with it and throw in the towel. But I don't want to say the hell with it and throw in the towel. I want to be successful. There's a lot of things that I want to do, and I also know that I need to surround myself with like-minded people and others that also want to achieve their goals. Make their dreams come true. Um, and of course, it may not always happen like that. Like I said, there's going to be setbacks, there's going to be failures, but it's not so much the failure that occurs as it is what you do to overcome that failure. So, life hits you, you got to hit back 10 times harder. That's all there is to it. You have to decide for yourself, what do you want? And what steps are you going to take to get what you want? How are you going to make it happen? When are you going to make it happen? And that's exactly what I'm going to do. I've always considered myself a bit of a entrepreneur. So, I was 15 years old. I started my own woodworking shop. I used to love woodworking. I took shop in school, and I thought, hey, this is cool. This is something that I can do, and it's relaxing. Woodworking, and I just thought maybe I could make some projects at home and sell them. Actually, how that started was I made a few things in my garage, and I just basically sat them out in the driveway, and I wasn't sitting them out in the driveway to necessarily be sold, but I actually had a father and his son stop by, and he was looking, and I was in the house at the time, and I came out. I was like, "Hey, how's it going?" And do we know each other? And he was asking me if the items I had sitting out in the driveway were for sale, and I said, "Well, no, but how much are you offering?" And long story short, I sold two pieces. I sold a chair and a little storage cubby or compartment that I had built, and both of them were unfinished. Well, they were finished; they were built. They just weren't, stained. I hadn't put any lacquer or stain on them. But they bought them, and then it just occurred to me, hey, And I used to make a lot of speaker boxes, for the dudes in the neighborhood that used to have their speaker boxes, with the subs and the amps and everything in their trunks. And another year, by the time I was about 16, I was the go-to guy for making speaker boxes, and I built them a lot cheaper than a lot of the electronic stores around town at the time. They were just building them out of basic particle board, and then gluing carpet to the outside, and they just So I made custom speaker boxes for people, which was great. I made some decent coin doing that, and then by the time I was 17 years old, I ran my own wood shop, like full-blown wood shop, which was pretty awesome. Oh, here's my little kitty. Thought she was gonna come join in the video. By 19, I was always into technology and and tearing things apart just to see what made them tick, see how they worked. So uh, I kind of got into a mode where I thought, well, I can fix computers, I can build computers. So by the time I turned 19, I was running my own computer repair shop. You know, I got my first. I did a lot of things in between then and the age of 22. I ran that for a few years. I also did construction, manual labor, factory work, um, all that fun stuff. Some automotive work. But I got my first, official IT job at age 22, and then I had a pretty successful career, pretty successful corporate career. Um, up until the last few years prior to me, retiring, so to speak. Not retiring in the sense that hey, I made all this money and now I can retire and not do jack shit for the rest of my life because I got a pension and no, 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 don't get me wrong. Uh, Retirement as in I just got sick of it. I got tired of it. It was destroying me mentally. Being on call 24/7. Uh, that anticipation, when I want to go to bed or leave the house, if my phone is going to ring, and how long am I going to be sitting on a call? You know, oh, a company got breached, so we have to initiate the incident response protocol. So I have to call up my team, and you know, all hands on deck. So 2, 3 in the morning, people aren't so happy about that, and I know I sure wasn't, but I enjoyed it for a long time. It was a hobby that became a profession, but it got to a point where I just wasn't happy with it anymore. It was destroying me physically and mentally. I was too sedentary, sitting in an office or sitting at a desk in a fluorescent lit cubicle, which I which I basically call hell with fluorescent lights. Some cases I had a window to look outside, others I didn't, which was just not fun. It just makes you feel like you're trapped in prison. And I just realized that's not what I was meant for. Not long term. I had a really good run. I had a successful career in tech. Started in IT, went to information security, and then I specialized in cybersecurity. And I still, keep an eye on things. I still kind of keep up to date on a lot of stuff. Worst comes to worst, if I had to jump back into it, I could, but I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to go back into that. Uh, you know, Thinking back and just kind of reflecting back in the childhood and everything, I want to start my own business again. This time, better, more efficiently than what I had back then, especially knowing what I know now. I network with a lot of business professionals or business owners. And in my career in tech, I've worked with, every level from receptionist to, the C-suite to founders and owners. I've worked with them all and all the clients that I supported, hundreds of them, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of endpoints. Even in some cases, when working at a managed service provider, that was all under a single pane of glass. And, from one console. But now I'm just thinking, I have a plan in place. I have the framework built. I've got the foundation built, and now I want to build from that. I want to build my own business. I want to be successful. I'm not looking to be, some millionaire. I'm not looking to be, a big fancy CEO. That's not me. That's not my thing. Because I'm a hands-on kind of guy. I'm not a boardroom kind of guy. I've sat in lots of boardroom meetings, with stakeholders, shareholders, whatever, executives. I've worked in an enterprise environment. I'm not a boardroom person. I don't consider myself a CEO, even though technically I hold that role in what I'm building now, but I'm actually changing the title. I'm not going to refer to myself as a CEO. I don't want to. I don't want that negative connotation that comes with being a CEO, especially nowadays. And a lot of that is actually changing anyway. But, a founder, yes. Owner, yes. But, I'm not even going to put owner because that's kind of just implied. But founder and then, lead or, I'm not going to do the whole president, vice president thing. But I'm thinking lead or, another title that is more I guess, better suiting or an alternative to the, CEO. So, because I'm hands on, I like being out in the field. I like being on the front lines. I like being the one that's, getting their hands dirty, their feet wet, they're diving in head first, because I want to help other people. That's what I feel like I was meant to do. And that's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to sit, at some desk in some fluorescent lit cubicle, with two smartphones and, a freaking fancy office setup and, a couch and, a fridge with, expensive bottle of scotch sitting on top. Yeah, I've seen a lot of that too with clients I've worked with. It's all about status, I think. But instead, I'm going to be out there, talking to people, helping people. And I can be quite introverted. When I was a kid, I wasn't so much. As I've gotten older, I've become more introverted for sure. But just because I don't like most people. I just don't care for most people. I love animals more than most people. But I realize that, if I'm going to do this, if I'm going to make it happen, if I'm really going to stay true to my mission and execute on my vision, then, I need to get out there and make myself known. I need to make my ideas known, what my intentions are. And, I want to help people. So I know I'm being extremely vague, but I'll save that for another video for what I'm working on, because technically it's not finalized yet, so I don't want to say too much until I get the paperwork done, which hopefully after the new year, that paperwork should be done, so probably next week maybe. Or, well, it is done. I mean approved, because it's already been submitted, so. But, yeah, so just a reflection on 2025 and years prior. I think 2026 is going to be a wild year. I'm not saying it's not going to be difficult. Especially with the economic downturn that we're experiencing here in the good old US of A. Uh, I think things will be challenging, but I'm always up for a good challenge. I'm always up for a good challenge. So let's bring on 2026. Let's make it happen. If there's something you want to do, then get off your ass and get out there and do it. Make it happen. That's my advice. If there's something you want to do, something that you want, then go get it. Go claim it. Go make it happen. Because time waits for none. And we're not getting any younger. And we don't know how long we're going to be here, And all I know is I don't want to leave this this ball of dirt, knowing that there was so much more I could have done, that there was so much more that I left on the table. But I was just too, lazy or procrastinated or too depressed or too distracted to do it and make it happen. 2026, I'm going to overcome those obstacles and I'm going to make it happen. And I'm going to be successful. That is my plan. That's the goal, and I'm going to make it happen. So I hope everyone watching this, I hope you guys have a most awesome new year. Have fun, stay safe, and we'll catch you in 2026.